Let us start this module by understanding the price behavior and inflation. Price behavior implies the tendency of price to fluctuate during particular time period. We can observe the price behavior of equity markets, debt market, foreign exchange market, real estate markets, etc. However, in this module, we are restricted to price behavior of general price level in India. Wholesale price index and consumer price index represents general price level in India. The consumer price index shows more pragmatic result since it depicts the prices which is paid by the consumers. By analyzing the movement and variations in these indices, we can determine the behavior of general price level. Normally, general price level depicts two types of behavior, that is inflation and deflation. Inflation is a sustained increase in the general price level, whereas deflation is a sustained decrease in the price level. As per the classical economist, both inflation and deflations were purely monetary phenomenon and does not have any impact on the real factors such as production and employment. As per the classical economist, there is a dichotomy between the real factors and the monetary factors, and as a consequence, monetary factors cannot influence real factors. However, this dichotomous thinking was overwhelmed after Keynes' famous work, The General Theory on Employment, Interest and Money. Keynes stressed the importance of both government interventions and monetary policies to boost up the economies. After Keynes, there was an era of Keynesian and other monetarist economies whom prominently believes that both the fiscal and the monetary policies can affect the production and employment levels in an economy. As use of expansionary fiscal and monetary policy increase both nation income and inflation, hence little bit of inflation can be endured. However, it is high rate of inflation which is the cause of worry. Inflation would not have cause of concern if there is efficient price mechanism and there is no inequality in the distribution of income in the country, but this is not a case. Price mechanism is not efficient anywhere in the world and there also exist glaring inequalities everywhere in the world. Due to both of these phenomenon, that is inefficient price mechanism and inequality in the distribution of income, high rate of inflation redistributes the wealth amongst the members of the society in a way that some benefits at the cost of the others. People of the lower and fixed income groups mostly suffered during inflation since their income increased at marginal rates which is completely offset by high inflation rates, and as a consequence their purchasing power goes down significantly. For this reason, inflation raises concern among the lower and the middle income groups. The problem is more alarming in economies where the inequalities in distribution of income is large, such as India. In the countries where there is more inequality, then the majority of the population consists of the lower and middle class income groups, and as a consequence there is more hue and cry due to inflation in such countries. After studying this module, you shall be able to know the trend in price behavior of the general price level, understand the factors that affect inflation, know about the anti-inflationary policy in India. Now, we will discuss the trends in general price level. Wholesale price index. General price level in India is represented by two indices, that is wholesale price index and consumer price index. Wholesale price index includes all transactions at first point of bulk sale in the domestic market. It represents the prices at the first point of bulk sale in the domestic market of the items included in the representative basket. Currently, the base of wholesale price year is 2004 and 5 and it has 676 items in its representative basket. The price of the base year is set to 100 and thereafter if there is any movement in the prices, then it represented on the scale of 100. Wholesale price index is currently divided into three categories, that is primary articles, fuels and power and manufactured products. These three categories have different subcategories and under that subcategories different items are included. As already mentioned that currently there are 676 items, the weight of each item in the index has been derived with the help of ratios which transaction values of an item bears with the value of the entire wholesale transaction in an economy. After working out weight for each item, the weight of the subcategories are determined by adding the weight of the items falling under them. Thereafter, the weights of the categories are determined by adding the weight of the subcategories falling under them. India, government and the other several statutory bodies mainly use wholesale price index as an indicator of the general price index. In India, price behavior in the general price index, that is inflation and deflation, is measured through the wholesale price index. Fiscal and monetary policies are predominantly influenced by the wholesale price index in India. Wholesale price index in India is available on monthly basis. The chart represents the wholesale price index for all commodities from the year 2005 to 2014 on monthly basis. From the chart, it is evident that general price level in India is showing sustained increase over the time, hence inflation. The table shows the annual inflation rate for each year, that is from 2005 to 2014. The annual inflation rate has been computed by applying semi-logarithmic equation. Consumer Price Index. Another indicator of general price level is Consumer Price Index. The Central Statistics Office, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has started the new series of consumer price indices with the base year 2010. The index for the base year is set to 100 and thereby all the changes in the price level is expressed on the scale of 100 as in the case of wholesale price index. The indices are calculated separately for rural and urban areas. Thereafter, these indices are combined so as to prepare the consumer price index at the combined level. The indices are prepared at all India level and also at states or UTs level. These indices are in effect from January 2011 and are calculated on monthly basis. Consumer price indices measure changes in the general level of the prices of goods and services over time that households purchase for consumption. As this index reflects the changes in the level of the prices that are finally paid by the consumers, so it is better indicator of the general price level than the wholesale price index. Government and the other statutory body in India, besides looking wholesale price index, also look consumer price indices for the effective planning and implementation of fiscal and monetary policies. The chart represents the consumer price index at the combined level from the year 2011 and 14 on monthly basis. Except a sharp decline in the month of December 2014, it can be clearly seen that there is steady increase in the general price level over the time. Hence, consumer price index also shows inflation over the time. The table shows the annual inflation rate for each year from 2011 to 2014. The annual inflation rate in this case has also been computed by applying semi-logarithmic equations. From both of the indices, it is evident that in India there exists high rate of inflation. Little bit of inflation rate can be sustained on the pretext of economic development, but inflation in double figures is too high and completely unjustifiable. Inflation at such high rate can create havoc in countries like India, where there is sharp inequalities in the distribution of income. As already stated, that inflation raises great concern among the lower and the middle income groups, and India population mostly consists of the lower and the middle income groups. People, therefore, inflation is a major cause of concern in India. It almost brings all kinds of instabilities in India, that is economic instability, financial instability, social unrest, political instabilities, etc. And due to these instabilities, uncertainties arises about the future prospects of the country. Let us now discuss the factors affecting inflation. There are mainly two types of inflation, that is demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. Factors resulting in demand pull inflations in India. Demand pull inflation arises due to the positive demand shock in an economy. Due to the positive demand shock, aggregate demand increases, and as a consequence, aggregate supply falls short of aggregate demand. The shortage of supply will create upward pressure on the prices, and the price level will start rising. In demand pull inflation, the driving force for the upward rise in the price is aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is a summation of consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, and the government expenditure. Any factor that impact these expenditures in a positive way shall result in demand pull inflation. In India, following factors have resulted in demand pull inflation in the recent time. Increase in marginal propensity to consume. Over the years, it has been observed in India that saving rate of non-corporate persons have gradually decreased. In general, there is rise in per capita income in India, and this is coupled with the increase in marginal propensity to consume. On the other hand, in this era of globalization, there are many MNCs operating in India. These MNCs are providing wide variety of goods and services. There is almost a product for every kind of need. Hence, in contemporary India, consumers have wide array of choices. All these factors lead to rise in consumption expenditure, and as a consequence, aggregate demand increases. Increase in the government expenditure. Government expenditure in India are growing at a significant rate. Fiscal policies are mainly related to the government revenues and expenditures. Government collect revenues mainly by imposing taxes, and through these revenues government make expenditures. Now government incur expenditures on the welfare of the public. These expenditures, besides improving the welfare of the society, also foster economic growth in an economy. Keynesian economists emphasize the role of government expenditures for promoting economic development in an economy. It consistently with Keynesian economists nowadays, government are relying heavily on the fiscal policies so as to bring economic development in an economy. Expansionary monetary policies. Reserve Bank of India, that is RBI, which is a monetary authority in India, has hitherto used lenient monetary policies so as to support the rising national income and deficit spending by the government. Due to the use of lenient monetary policies, interest rate declines. Declining interest rate lead to a rise in both investment expenditure and consumption expenditure. Now, rise in investment expenditure and consumption expenditure shall lead to increase in the aggregate demand. Even on the other hand, money supply is positive related with the price level through following equation. Money demand is equals to K times the national income into the price level, where K is some constant number. Now, in equilibrium, money supply should be equals to money demand. Hence, money supply is equals to K times national income multiplied by price level. Thus, increase in money supply put an upward pressure on the price level. Factors resulting in cost push inflation in India. Cost push inflation arises due to the negative shock on the aggregate supply curve. Due to negative supply shock, there is an increase in the cost of production, and as a consequence, aggregate supply curve shifts to the left. When aggregate supply curve shifts left, aggregate supply falls short of aggregate demand. Now, excess demand create upward pressure on the price level, and the price level rises until the excess demand wipes out the aggregate demand, becomes equal to the aggregate supply. Increase in the food prices. Surge in the level of the food prices have serious repercussions for an economy. One of the negative impact is food driven inflation. Due to the increase in the level of food prices, the cost of living rise, thereby compelling the workers to bargain for higher wage rates. Due to increase in the wage rate, the cost of production goes up, which results in the negative supply shock, and as a consequence, aggregate supply falls short of the aggregate demand. This results in excess demand at current price level, and hence the price level begins to surge. Sustained increase in the prices of oil and fuels. Except in the year 2008, which was the crisis period also, and the year 2014, prices of oil have generally arisen. Even after considering the fall of the oil prices in the year 2008 and 2014, oil prices show general tendency to increase over the time. Oil is one of the most important fuels, and a rise in the price of oil shall also increase the price of other things which can be used as a fuel. As oil is used as a fuel in productive activities, increase in the oil prices increase the cost of production. Rise in the cost of production creates negative supply shocks, and as a consequence, there is an upward pressure on the price level. Wage price spiral. Wage price spiral is a process through which expected inflation results in the actual inflation. Thus, wage price spiral is self-fulfilling prophecy which turns expectation into actuality. It is important and primary a cost push inflation, but it also shares certain characteristics of the demand pull inflations also. Wage price spiral forms an infinite loop of inflation. It starts with the expectation of inflation in an economy. With the expectation of inflation in an economy, various factors of production start demanding higher wages for their work. As a consequence, there is an increase in the cost of production which creates negative supply shock. How inflation can be controlled? To explain this, let us move on to discuss the anti-inflationary policy in India. Inflation can be controlled both through fiscal and monetary measures. The Government of India initiates fiscal measures whereby RBI undertakes monetary measures. As there is currently high rate of inflation in India, So both the steps have been taken to control inflation. Fiscal measures. Controlling the food-driven inflation. Food-driven inflation is very alarming in India. To control food inflation in India, government has taken many steps. Some of these steps are as follows. First, restrictions imposed on future trading of certain food items such as rice, urad, turmeric in commodity exchange market. These restrictions would curb down speculative behavior in the food items, and as a result, the prices of food items would fall and stabilized. Second, delisting of certain food items from the purview of Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee Act. This would benefit both the farmers and the consumers. As per the Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee Acts, the farmers would sell listed food items only to the approved middlemen. This act was introduced so as to protect the farmers. Third, fixation of the minimum support prices on the certain food items such as onion and potatoes at the high side. High export price would demotivate foreign buyers to purchase the food items from India, and this would result in the lower exports. Lower exports would ensure sufficient supply of food items in the domestic market, thereby preventing the surge in the price level in the domestic market. Fourth, reduction in the import duties of certain food items such as wheat, onion, pulses, etc. to zero. This would encourage import of food items at the lower prices and would ensure stability of price level of food items in the domestic market. Fifth, imposition of stock limit on certain food items. The imposition of limit on the buffer stock building would curb down the speculative activities, and as a consequence, upward pressure on these food items would reduce. Controlling the government expenditure and fiscal deficit. In past few years, government has taken a balanced approach while setting up the budget. The balanced budget implies that the government seeks appropriate trade-off between growth and inflation. On one hand, expenditure is necessary so as to put an economy towards the path of growth. However, when government incur expenditure, the pressure on the price level build up, which results in inflation. Hence, the government of India is trying its best so as to make the balanced budget for the country. In balanced budget, it is seen that inefficient expenditure should be avoided as far as and fiscal deficit could be kept under control. Monetary measures. Monetary measures are taken up by the RBI to control inflation in India. RBI is a monetary authority in India and as such is a regulator of many monetary variables that have direct impact on inflation. Some of these monetary variables are repo rates, cash reserve ratio CRR, open market operations OMO, statutory liquidity ratio SLR, etc. Some of the steps taken by RBI to control inflation are as follows. First, currently the Government of India and RBI have arrived at agreement whereby it is agreed that RBI shall maintain minimum flexible inflation target. Under flexible inflation target, instead of setting one rate as benchmark, different rates are selected for different years. Under this agreement, it is agreed that RBI shall maintain inflation rate of 6% for the year 2015-16 and less than 2% for all subsequent years. If RBI fails to maintain these targets, then it shall report to the Government of India the reasons for its failure to achieve the target along with the remedial action proposed to be taken by the RBI for meeting the targets. Second, RBI had substantially increased the marginal standing facility, that is MSF, rate in the year 2013 by 3% over the repo rate. Banks obtained loan for short term from RBI through repo and MSF. As there are several requirements imposed on borrowing through repo, so when banks are unable to comply the requirement of repo borrowings, they borrow through MSF. Due to the rise in the interest rate, bank borrowing becomes costliest to the bank also start lending at the high rate. Higher interest rate would cut down the investment and the consumption expenditure, and as a result aggregate demand would fall. Due to the fall in the aggregate demand, price level would also fall. Third, overall allocation of fund under liquid adjustment facility, which is LAF, was limited to 0.5% of net demand and time liabilities in the year 2013. LAF implies borrowing under repo by banks from RBI. So, if these borrowings are restricted to 0.5% of the net demand and time liability, then this would imply that bank could not borrow more than this limit. As a consequence, banks have to borrow through MSF at higher interest rates. Fourth, both CRR and SLR are kept at the higher side. Currently, the CRR is 4%, whereas the SLR is 21.5%. CRR ranges from 1% to 2% and SLR ranges from 6% to 7% in developed nations. As a result of the high CRR and SLR, bank lending capacity reduces. Fifth, increase in bank rate by RBI. The bank rate is the interest rate at which bank borrows from RBI for long term. Bank rate is also fixed by adding certain percentage to repo rate. Currently, the difference between bank rate and the repo rate is 1%. However, in the year 2013, this difference was increased to 3% so as to make bank borrowing costlier and curb inflation. Sixth, RBI announced sale of government bond through open market operations to the extent of 25 billions in year 2013. This sale was intended to wipe out the liquidity from market. As liquidity decreases in the market, the price level automatically falls down. Suggestive measures to control inflation. For controlling inflation, both the government and monetary authorities should work in an integrated manner. Neither government nor monetary authority solely can control inflation. Here are some suggestive measures to control inflation. Not allowing to build expectation of inflation. Both monetary authorities and the government should try their best so as to prevent building up of expectation of inflation in an economy. Once expectation of inflation build up in an economy, then the process of never-ending wage price spiral starts. Once the process of wage price spiral starts, then it is difficult to control. Expectation of inflation can only be controlled through effective and reliable policies of the government and monetary authorities. If the policies are effective and reliable, then the environment of trust in an economy is developed. Once an environment of trust is developed, then the expectation of inflation automatically debilitates. Due to the debilitation of expectation of inflation, actual inflation is automatically controlled. Efficiency in the government expenditure. Controlling of government expenditure is only a temporary solution to control inflation. The permanent and effective way to control inflation is to bring efficiency. Efficiency implies the difference between output and input. As this difference increases, efficiency also increases. Government should try to evaluate the benefits of expenditure incurred by them, and if the benefits exceeds the cost, then it should only incur expenditure. The yardstick for measuring the benefits should be such that it could measure both monetary and non-monetary outcomes. The primary duty of the government is good governance, and important criteria for measuring good governance is efficiency. Equality. Efficiency can achieve higher growth, but this growth cannot be retained for long term if the benefit of growth is not disturbed in an equitable manner. If there exists effective price mechanism in the market where everything could be priced, then there would have been no externality. In such a case, no one would be able to gain at the cost of the other, and the benefit of growth would have been distributed in an equitable manner. But in actual, this is not a case. Price mechanism is the market is ineffective, and as a consequence, there exist many externalities in the market. Due to these externalities, some gain at the cost of others. This phenomenon leads to concentration of wealth in few hands and growth of inequality in an economy. Hence, in end, it can be said that besides reliable and effective policies, the policy maker should also try to achieve efficiency and equality in an economy. Policy makers should try their best to create environment of trust in an economy, bring efficiency and reduce inequalities. If all these three things can be achieved simultaneously, then the country can achieve all types of stability, that is economic stability, financial stability, political stability and social stability. Let us now summarize what we have studied in this module. In this module, initially the concept of price behavior is discussed. Price behavior refers to the movement in the prices of anything during the particular time period. In this module, we are interested in the price behavior of the general price level in India. Generally, two types of behavior is shown by the general price level, that is inflation and deflation. Inflation refers to sustained increase in the general price level, where in contrast, deflation refers to sustained decrease in the general price level. Classical economists stressed that there is dichotomy between monetary and real factors, and due to this, neither inflation nor deflation have any impact on the output and employment. However, Keynes changed this dichotomous thinking and postulated the importance of fiscal and monetary policy in boosting up the economy. Use of the fiscal and monetary policies to foster the economic growth in an economy brings inflationary pressures, and Keynesian and the other monetarist economies shows that little bit of inflation can be sustained on the pretext of the growth. Thereafter, we have discussed the price trends in India. General price index is measured by two indices in India, that is the wholesale price index and the consumer price index. Wholesale price index is widely used by the government authorities to measure the inflation in India. Wholesale price index represents the prices at the first point of bulk sale in the domestic market and is currently divided into three categories, that is primary articles, fuel and power and manufactured products. Weight is assigned to each of these three categories, and with the help of these weights, wholesale price index of all the commodities is derived. We have observed the price behavior of wholesale price index from the year 2005 to 2014 and have also observed that there is sustained increase in the general price level. Hence, inflation is evident from wholesale price index. Thereafter, we have observed the consumer price index. This index reflects the changes in the level of prices that are finally paid by the consumers and is therefore more important than wholesale price index to the common people. We also observe the price behavior of consumer price index from 2011 to 2014, and it also demonstrates inflation at the rate higher than that shown by the wholesale price index. Afterwards, we have discussed the factors affecting inflations in India. These factors are broadly divided into two categories. One, the demand pull inflation, and second, the cost push inflation. Factors resulting in demand pull inflations are the increase in marginal propensity to consume of the people, increase in the government expenditure, and lax monetary policies. Factors resulting in the cost push inflation are increased in the food and the oil prices. Development of expectation of inflation in an economy also results in actual inflation through a process known as wage price spiral. Finally, we have discussed the anti-inflationary policies in India. These policies are also divided into two categories, that is fiscal measures and monetary measures. Fiscal measures are the measures taken by the government to control inflation. Monetary measures means the steps taken by the RBI and include the increase in the policy rates, maintenance of high CRR and SLR, and the sale of government bonds through open market operations. Government of India and RBI should also work in an integrated and comprehensive manner so as to implement reliable and effective policies to control inflation and also create environment of trust in an economy which would prevent the expectation of inflation to develop in an economy.